Hello, Thunkers. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Hope you're all looking forward to the official episode 1 of Thunkable on Air. So, Thunkable on Air, if you weren't watching last week or 2 weeks ago, this is an opportunity for us to kind of sit down and do a bit of a deep dive into one of the components or some of the blocks that are available on the platform. There's a live chat going. So my name is Donal and Jimmy is in the comments as well. If you've got any questions as we go along, please leave a question for us and we're going to do our best to get to you. So let's see. Seems like it's going out live here. There might be a little bit of a delay between what you see and what I see, but keep your comments coming and we'll get to them then in the video. You might have noticed, actually, I think that's stalled it there. Let me go to my screen sharing. Okay, so let's have a look. Screen share here like this. So today what we have is a little heads up display with the phone over here. My phone, it seems to be updating. I'm gonna have to be able to see. I want to jump back and forth and learn how to remove items. And yeah, remove items and stuff as well. If you're using lists in your own app, then by all means, please do send us a message. Okay. Maybe it's not working for me. Let me know in the comments if you can see the picture or hear the sound. It seems to be streaming fine for me. For whatever reason, we've got a little Hangouts. There we go. Okay, maybe it just took a little while for the picture to load. Okay, so let's jump into the slides then for today. Hopefully you can see these okay. So Thunkable on Air episode 1 is all about lists. If you weren't watching last time out, we talked about creating a list of images. So we had a kind of carousel, and what we're going to do is create an archive of these on the community. So if you want to learn about Thunkable, one of the best places and one of the best ways to do that is by connecting and communicating with other Thunkers all around the world in the Thunkable community. So we're going to create an archive there, and you can ask questions about what happened last week in case you missed the show. So last week then what we did was we had a list of images, and we were able to just scroll through those or move through those on the screen. We were looking at the image component. So we learned about properties for the image component. So we were able to set the height and the width of that. And then we learned about the button as well. So we could do things like change the text and change the colors and the font color and so forth. If you're new to Thunkable then, you've tuned in at a great time. So we're starting off with kind of some simpler, some beginner kind of tutorials. It uses visual programming, so there's no need to type in lines and lines of code. The nice thing about Thunkable Cross is that the cross means cross-platform. So when the app that we build today, that you'll be able to run it on your iPhone and you'll be able to run it on your Android tablet. You'll be able to run it on your iPad and you'll be able to run it on your Android TV. So that's the great thing about being cross-platform. And then what I'll do is at the end of this is, and you can remind me if I forget, is to remix the projects by sharing links with other people. This is a great way to collaborate with other users, either at school or at work or like that, by using the community and collaborating with people around the world. And finally then, yeah, we've got a community of incredible Thunkers out there, and many of you watching at the moment. So yeah, to get started with Thunkable then, there's no need for any expensive hardware or any special software, specialized software. All you need is some sort of web browser. Chrome tends to work quite well. You'll need an email address for the moment. That's to log into Thunkable and to log into the live testing app. And ideally, you should have some sort of device to test your app out on. So the first thing we want to do is introduce 2 new components. Last week, or in the previous episode, we learned how to use the button, but we're going to introduce a text input. That's going to allow our user to come along and to type in different text, different sentences, anything into the application. And then we're going to use the list viewer then to display these items in the application. So that's the first thing we're going to do. In terms of creating our user interface, it's just going to be very simple. Three items, a text input and a button, and then we're going to use the list viewer then to display the list. The blocks are going to be a little bit more complicated, but it shouldn't be too difficult at all. Okay, so I see there's a great conversation going on in the chat there. Keep your questions coming. So I'm going to get rid of this label here. We're going to start with a blank screen. Let's just make the whole thing white as well. Lovely. And you can see the live preview here is streaming over on the right hand side. So I said that we are going to need a text input over here. That's going to be for the user to type in whatever piece of information they want to store in the list. Underneath that then, we'll put in a button. We'll just move that underneath. So the little blue line on the screen shows you where everything goes. And then this button will be, say, add item, like that. You can change the text property here to make it say whatever you want. I'm going to change the background color to blue and change the text color to white, like this. And so just there's a little bit more contrast. It's a little bit easier to see. And then for the text itself, let's make this a little bit wider. So you can see at the moment, by default, it's the little red box here is showing us how big the text input is on the screen. And we have height and width to make it taller and to make it wider. So if we choose the fill container, that means now you can see how much wider that red box is after becoming. That means that our text box is going to take up the entire width of the screen. And the last thing then is that we're going to use this to enter items into our list or enter things into our list. The button then is going to send them to the list. And then the list viewer, that's the final component we need. And you can see that that takes up actually the vast majority of the screen over here like this. So that's going to show all the individual items as we type them in. Okay, so in terms of the user, or that's it in terms of user interface, and we'll add some more components to this as it goes along. But the next thing we want to do then is add in our blocks. So the user basically is going to click this button down here, going to click add item, and it's going to add whatever has been typed into the text box. So let's go when the button is clicked like this. We can zoom in here a tiny bit to make it easier to see. When the button is clicked, what we're going to do is take the text item here like this, and we're going to display that into our list. That's probably the easiest thing to do right away. Okay, so like that. So that's not even a list, so that won't work. So let's make an actual list to display that in. Okay, so we'll make it a little bit more challenging. So a variable, we're going to use variables here to store or to work with our list. We'll have a list of, what are we using here? Items. So it can be anything. You can put anything you like in your list. Words, letters, numbers, places, people. If you had a list of users, this could be all your usernames, for instance. And then what we're going to do is add an item to this list. So we're going to go and add in an item to our list. That's the first thing we need to do. And it wants to know what list should we add the item to. So we're going to add it to our list of items like this. Whereabouts do we want it to be placed in the list? So we could put it at the beginning of the list. We could put it at the end of the list. We could put it at a specific location in the list, and we'll look at those in more detail in a minute. And then the final thing is it wants that piece of text. So that's what I have here. That's what it wouldn't accept from me earlier. So that's a piece of text. So this text goes into the list, and our text items, that's going to be our list of items, like so. So what's happening here, when our app starts or when it loads, we're going to create an empty list. And then every time button 1, or even what we can do here is we can rename this. Maybe that might be a better idea. So button add item, like that. Every time that button is pressed, what we can do is put a new item into the list. So best thing to do here, I think, let's have a look at the blocks, is try it out. So for instance, if we click into our text box here, what we can do is say 1, and that goes into the list. 2, we better get, so the text actually stays in the text box. So let's go 2, like that. It's a little bit tricky to see. I'm going to make the text a bit bigger over here because my screencasting software is getting in the way. So in my text input, let's see if I can make the text itself any bigger. Maybe I can't. Text style, font size. Let's make it nice and easy to see. So 1, 2. Oh, you see. So that's what I'm saying there is that that I have to delete that first of all, and then it goes into the list. Delete the number 2 then, or the word 2. Type in 3, for instance, and there you go. So that each time you input a new item, it gets added to the list. So let's make the functionality is fine here. It works pretty nicely, I think. But what we want to do is improve the user experience, or the UX. So if we go back to our blocks, that text input here, that was actually not being cleared out. So you can leave it blank like this if you want. So we try now. What'll happen is that when I type in a word and, then when I click the button, it's going to clear out the text field here. So this should be ready to go then for my second one. So now you see the one was deleted or removed. If I type in 2, you can see that when I click the button, the word gets deleted. So you're ready. It just makes it much faster to add in items like that. Okay, so what we want to do then is look at, well, let's have a look at the slides here. Okay, so placing items into our list. I think that's our first bit here. So we're adding in items, can add them into the list, and then you can clear out the text input along the way. The next thing we're going to do then is look at, now that we have items in our list, the next thing we want to do is remove items from that list. So to do that, we want to understand a little bit more about kind of the words and the vocabulary we use for describing any list. Here's an example. It could be a shopping list, but if it's your list of usernames or list of IDs or whatever, they might be email addresses, they might be numbers, it could be anything like that. So we could have milk, we could have eggs, we could have bread, for instance. So they can be in any particular order in this list. And you can see that all of these items in the red boxes, each one of these things or each one of those products in Thunkable, they'd be referred to as items. Okay, and you can also see on the left-hand side then that each one of those items has a kind of specific location or a number associated with it. So in this instance, this would be called an index. And what you can do is you can say, well, what's the second item in the list? And you'd find what item lives at index number 2. In this case, it would be eggs. And you could do the opposite as well. So what position or what index does milk have in the list? It has an index of 1. So it allows you to kind of work back and forth. We can know one piece of information and you can always find out the other. When it comes to removing an item from a list, we want to be able to click on an item and we want to be able to remove that item from the list. It should disappear. So it should disappear from the variable and it should also disappear from the list viewer on screen. So there's a couple of different updates that we're going to have to do. So let's go back to Thunkable and have a look at this really quickly. So what we can do here is in the list viewer itself, there's a event called when list viewer 1 item click. So that each one of these is an item, and each one of these has a click event. So I could click on 1, click on 2, click on 3, like that. Like this. So if we click on a particular item, then what we can do is remove that item from the list, or remove item number 1 from the list, remove item number 2 from the list. So if we have a look at our list blocks, there's an option down here to remove an item based on its number. That's what that symbol here means. So we'll go, first of all, tell it which list we're working with. That's our list of items, like so. And what do we want to do? We want to remove a particular number. So we'll use the index because that corresponds to its number within the list. So what happens here, that from a code perspective, that works fine. It removes whatever you've clicked from the list, but it doesn't actually update the list viewer itself. So what we want to do is update the list viewer on the screen so that the user sees this new list of items. So with just a couple of different blocks like that, what we should be able to do here, if we go onto the other side, let's type in a couple of items here into our list really quickly. If I click on B, clicking on that now should remove it from the list. Clicking on A will remove that from the list. Clicking on C removes that from the list. So you could use any event here. You could have another button. We could create a second button, for instance, to go remove item, and we could remove an item based on, we could store which item was clicked or something like that as well. A little bit more challenging maybe, but that's a straightforward way of doing it. So let's have a look back over here, see how we're getting on with our goals and with our challenges for this afternoon. So we were able to remove based on its index. And the next thing that we're going to do is generate a list of numbers. So how are people getting on here in the comments? Okay, excellent. Hello to everybody who is tuning in and watching. Hello to I'll give everybody a shout out. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for tuning in. So the next thing we're going to do is create a list of numbers. So to do that, what we're going to do is go back to our user interface. We'll add in a second button. That's the first thing, because I want to introduce, before the end, I want to introduce some rows as well, if we haven't seen them yet. So we're going to do create a list of numbers. This was actually a question that was asked in the community a while ago, and it comes up every now and again. People want to know how to create a list of numbers. Something like that. Let's go with this maybe, and change the colors there so it makes it a little bit easier to see. Okay, so create a list of numbers. So this is now called button 1. So let's button numbers maybe. Okay. And what we're going to do is create a list of, let's be more specific even. Let's say it's going to be a list of 50 numbers. Okay, so if we wanted to, we could use a block here like this, and we could say that we're going to just create 3 numbers, or we could create 4 numbers or something like that by adding items to the list like this. And this is kind of the way we added images to our list in the previous episode. So we're adding one item at a time. What we're going to do instead, though, is that when the numbers button is clicked, we're going to use a loop, because we don't want to do that 50 times. We don't have to drag and drop in 50 items individually. So we're going to use a loop. So up here in control, there is the ability to do something repeatedly. So count with I from 1 to 10 by 1. So we'll play around with this a little bit and we can figure out how it works. So we're going to use a variable here called I. I starts with an initial value of 1. When we start counting, we start at 1, and we count up to 10, and we count 1 at a time. So what I want to do next then is I want to add items to my list. So let's add items to the list in items, add them in at the end like that. So we'll add our variable here called I at the end. So 1 will be the last thing, and then 2 will be the last thing, and then 3 will be the last thing. Okay, so let's add in that variable I here. So it doesn't have to be just text. It can be a number. It can be a variable. You can put whatever you want into your list. And once we're finished with the loop, so the loop is here, this runs 10 times at the moment. And then what we want to do is display those things, or display those items, those numbers in our list, like so. Let's try this out. So even though it says 50 on the screen, hopefully we'll see the numbers 1 to 10 like that. Now you might have been able to guess that how do I go from 1 to 50 instead? What we do here is we change that out. Instead of putting in 1 to 10, we put in the numbers from 1. So that's our starting point. 50 is our stopping point, and we're going up 1 at a time. So here are all the numbers from 1 to 50. You can see them scrolling by here like that. And what we can do is, the other thing then maybe just to look at really quickly is the step size here. So we're going in 1 item at a time. So let's try what happens if we went 2 items at a time. What would happen then, or what do you think would happen? So it'd show 1, and then the next one then we'd go up 2 numbers. So the next one would be 3, and then 2 numbers after that would be 5, and then the next number after that would be 7, and it would go all the way up till we got to 49, I think would be the last number that we'll see here. So that's our prediction anyway. Let's have a look here. We can see we've got all the odd numbers, and the last number on our list is 49. So that's what these three different parameters, or these three different values, do. Where do we start counting? Where do we stop counting? And where do we and kind of how do we move through the list? So one at a time, or two at a time, or whatever. So I want all 50 of these. Let's do that. So if we create a list of 50 numbers, that's what we have here. I've got to scroll on my actual phone though. That'll help. And then interesting behavior here is that if I click this again, clicking on my actual phone, if I click it again, you can see that underneath it goes from 50 and it goes to 1 again. So interesting kind of behavior. Maybe you want that. Maybe in your particular app, this is a useful thing for you to do. But if I click create another list like this, what will happen is we get another, I gotta click it on the phone. We get another list here. So every time I click it, keep going, there's another list down there at the end. So we go 48, 49, 50, and we keep scrolling down there. So that's kind of an interesting thing. So if you wanted to reset your list, what we can do is use this set block here, and we can set our list of items to be an empty list again, like that. And what that means then is that every time you click create another list, you can keep clicking and clicking and clicking, and click all you want, but it'll always be limited, or it'll always be capped at 50 items there, like so. So that's just another way then of generating different different lists, or different numbers of different lengths. Okay, let's see how we're going with our slides. Okay, so we've got our list of numbers, and we're displaying them all in the list viewer. Okay. The next thing then that we want to do, I guess, is start doing things with this list. So maybe we can sort them, or maybe we can shuffle them as well. The other thing we could do, if I didn't have that, or if you're wondering what was going on, is we could also have a block in the lists drawer, and that allows us to measure the length of the list. So for instance, you could check how many numbers were there, or how many items were there in our list of items. Okay. So now that we have the numbers from 1 to 50, maybe we want to go from 50 to 1, or maybe we want to be able to, if we had our list of words or names or something like that, we could sort those people alphabetically from A to Z, from Z to A, anything like that. So let's see if we can find a way to do that over here in the blocks. So create a list, and then okay, we're going to do one block, and we're going to use that for sorting. So let's make this one, actually, I've just changed my mind. I'm going to make this one green. That's too green. Let's make it darker green, maybe. And then we're going to put in one more button, and this will be button sort, I suppose. Like that. When you're adding components, you can add them in here on the component tree on the left-hand side, or you can use the designer in the middle of the screen. So that's just kind of a tip for when you're using Thunkable there. We get white text, and they'll have a red background like this. Okay, and then our button, this third button, is going to sort everything out. Okay, so what we want to do then is what happens when this button, so let's give it another name, button sort. And you can see that maybe when we only have one button, there wasn't really any need to rename it. But as you add more and more buttons, it becomes kind of a good idea. It's just a good practice, or a good habit to have, to start renaming your components that are on your screen. So what's going to happen then when the sort button is clicked? Well, let's have a look at our list blocks again and see if we can find any way of sorting the items that are in that list. So we can shuffle them. That's an interesting one. We can try that really quickly if you want. So let's have a look at the text items, and let's shuffle, excuse me. So we want to shuffle the list. So one thing you could do is you could actually manually put the list in here, or because we have everything in a variable, we can use the variable here, and we can shuffle the list of items like that. I think that's pretty good. Okay, let's get rid of that one here. So let's generate a list of 50 numbers, And then if we shuffle these, even though it says sort, what we've got then is we've got these numbers in a random order. So every time I hit sort, you can see that the numbers are shuffled around. They get randomized, or maybe pseudo randomized, over and over again here in that list. Okay, so that's shuffle. That was pretty easy. I think that's on our one of our last things that we want to do. But let's see then if we can sort them. So last thing to do here then is to have a look for here. We can sort numerically, ascending, or we can also sort descending. So let's get rid of, oh, we didn't even need the shuffle block either. Let's get rid of both of those. Throw it in the bin properly will be helpful. Okay, so here we go. We can sort in numeric ascending order. Let's go descending because my button by default is going to go from 1 to 50, and then sorting should go from 50. So 1 to 50, 50 to 1. Okay, that's pretty helpful. What do we want to do here? Let's clear out that list again, and let's go and create our own list. Okay, so we can also, in addition to being able to sort things numerically, we could have sort things alphabetically. Okay, so let's go back here and go Monday. Add that to our list. Tuesday, add that to our list. Wednesday, and put in another T, HU. Let's put in Thunkable. Why not? Okay, so what we can do then is we can sort these from Z to A, I guess, so in descending order. So we'd expect W and then the T's and then the M. So let's sort and let's see what happens there. That's great. That's working. If we flip this around now, this is going to clear out our list, I think. And then we can do the same thing as well. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we can sort them in ascending order, and they're actually already sorted, I think. So yeah, let's add in another one, add another item there, and sort those like that. There we go. Okay, so that's adding items to list, removing items from a list, sorting things in ascending order, sorting things in descending order, shuffling items. There's a whole bunch of different things that we can do here. One other UI thing I want to do. Yeah, we've got our shuffling done. Okay, let's do the UI thing really quickly. So the bottom of this page, you can see that we've got these 3 buttons. It'd be nice if they were side by side instead of stacked from top to bottom. So add item, sort. Maybe we might have to make this a little bit shorter. List of numbers. Just call it numbers for the moment. So if we want these 3 items to be side by side, the best component to use here is in the layout section over on the left hand side. We've got the row, and we can add that here. You can see where the blue dot is. We could put it above the text box. We could put it at the top of the screen if we really wanted to. I'm going to put it below the text input here, and I'm going to have my blue one, and then the green one then beside that, and then the red one to the side of that there. It's taking up a little bit too much space, so that means it's a little bit too tall. And what we want to do then is change the height of this. Let's change the height. Let's set it to fit contents. So the contents are these 3 buttons, and setting it to fit contents means that it's going to be as tall as the buttons inside like that. If we want a little bit more space around the buttons themselves, we have options then to add in a little bit of padding for the left hand side. Let's add in 4 pixels here, maybe. That's the wrong side. 4 pixels on the right as well, and you can see there's a little bit of space. If we add 4 pixels to the left and the right of the green button, there we go. And then, so now we've got 4 on the right-hand side of the blue button, and we've got 4 on the right-hand side of the green. So that's actually an 8-pixel gap. And over here, in between the green and the red, that's only a 4-pixel gap. So one more set of paddings there to the left and the right. And that means then that we've got our items all set up like that. Okay, so that's our kind of Thunkable Live for today. If you're looking for some new things, what I will do really quickly actually show you some of the new documentation that we've got out this week. You can ask in the community. There's some great videos on YouTube, not just the live streams, and then also check out our blog where we've got 18 of the best apps of 2018. So by all means, keep the conversation going and keep the questions coming in the chat. If you have them, any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. But for today, if I stop sharing my screen, but for today, I think that's it. So happy Friday, happy International Women's Day to any of our female thunkers out there. I hope you enjoyed today's stream. What I'm going to do is, actually what I'll do really quickly is I will paste the link. So if I go to share, and you're not able to see this because you're looking at my face at the moment, but I'm going to paste this into the chat as well. Okay, so what I've done there is shared the link to the project I was working on. What you can do is you can customize that and you can work away with that. If you have any ideas for components that you want to work with next week or features that you want to explore in a little bit more detail, let us know and we'll try and include them on our to-do list. Okay, have a great weekend, everybody. See you all next week.